Is it recording?
Yeah.
How
Looks
do I
like
know
it.
if it's
There's a
recording?
little thing up
Oh,
at the
okay,
top.
okay.
At the top.
Yeah. Okay. You wanna
That's
op-
where we stop
you
it.
wanna open?
Yes.
Okay.
So welcome. This is our meeting for May of SCBWI ENI, and we're very happy to welcome Tracy Badua, who we're interviewing. And then Karen, did you want to do the bio?
Sure. So I'm going to read the SCBWI inclusion statement first. As a reminder, SCBWI has a policy of supporting diversity and inclusion. This is a place we set aside for Kidlit creators and translators to meet, exchange ideas, and support one another in our efforts to bring great books to all children. Part of the reason we do this is so that they can see themselves and others reflected in their lives. We specifically focus on the art, craft, and business of publishing and try to keep on topic so everyone gets the most value from our time together. If you have any questions about this, please see the anti-harassment policy posted on the SCBWI website. Thank you. And I'm going to introduce Tracy Badua. Hello, Tracy.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Tracy is an award-winning Filipino American author of books for young people. By day, she's an attorney, and by night, she squeezes in writing, family time, and bites of her secret candy stash. She lives in San Diego, California. Tracy's work has garnered such accolades as the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators Sid Fleischman Humor Award and the Children's Literature Council of Southern California Award, multiple selections as Junior Library Guild Gold Standards, and inclusion on state book lists across the United States. She was a Out of the Margins Award winner with me, Karen Chow, and I am so happy to have met her, and we're just super excited to have her here today.
Hey, super excited to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm going to say up front, Karen has been handling the interviewing up until now. So this is my first foray into it. So
Right.
bear with me. Okay, so just have a couple of questions. We'll just talk through them, and then if we have some time, if you're available, maybe we can do some like questions at the end, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so my first question, it's a big one, is tell us about your journey to publication.
Yeah. So as was mentioned in my bio, as Karen mentioned, I am an attorney by trade. So I so, and as also mentioned, I am Filipino American, which means that when I was like a little kid, I was like, oh, I really like books and I really like reading and writing. I was like, I want to be an author. And my very well-meaning but very like intense Filipino grandmother was like, oh, you like reading and writing? I was like, yeah. She's like, lawyer. I was like I said author. She's like, no, no, it's pronounced lawyer. I was like, oh, okay. Well, so fast forward like couple decades, and I got my law degree, and eventually was like, all right, I have learned how to write in all these different ways for different audiences. Let me go back and try to like channel the passion back in and write fiction, write something I love. So that's kind of what spurred me to get into writing children's literature, is the like, oh, I guess I always wanted to do this. And then I got distracted by this whole like full-time job and wanting healthcare thing.
Yeah, minor details, right?
Right. Like I get it. Healthcare is a big deal. So I get it.
That's great. So I forgot to mention up top, of course, May is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, which is why we invited you.
Yeah.
So the next question is to ask you to tell us about your books, and because it is AANHPI month, we know that your books mostly highlight Filipino characters. But are there similar themes or anything else you purposely put into them?
Yeah, so I guess a little bit more broadly about my books. I write middle grade and young adult. So I think as of this past week, my 7th book is out. So I predominantly write middle grade. And I've co-authored a couple of things, but you're right. It is, all of my main characters are Filipino American. It's kind of like write what you know. But I think the approach that I've been taking is, um, it's mostly just like Filipino American kids like living their best or worst lives, really. It's not really, I there is definitely space for identity centered like fiction. So, but mine is mostly just like hijinks. So it's kids that who happen to be Filipino American, and it obviously colors, how they see and move around the world. But it's like, okay, now I'm dealing with like a family curse, or like now I'm in like a baking competition. It's not exactly like identity centered, though it is a feature of my characters. But I do that on purpose, because I really just, it's kids like adventures. And I feel like, growing up, you always read about other kids having adventures. It's like, oh, it'd be kind of fun. Like, how would I have been able to go on an adventure if like my grandma was home all the time? Like things like very personally. So, trying to at least, keep these stories like the from the lens in which I grew up, and then also making it accessible, very easily readable. And I try to throw in some comic relief because I'm a deeply unserious person. So I always try to throw that in.
The world could always use more of that, I say.
I was like, there's so much room for very serious like stories and very serious writing. And it's like, that's not how I want to spend my time right now.
Yeah. Someone's got to do it, right? So my next question is, where do you get your ideas? And as a follow-up to that, do you always write magical realism?
Ooh. So let me answer the second part first, because it's all my middle grade, well, other than the co-written one, which is like it's a mystery, but I tend to write magical realism. But my young adult novels are just straight contemporary. I prefer magic because it's just sometimes it's easier to magic your way out of a problem than to like deal with emotions. I love the middle grade magical realism space because you're like, oh, I'm sad. Let me just make this big magical thing, as opposed to, okay, I really need to sit and figure out why I'm sad. So there is some of that, but it's like the focus is the magic. But I think on where I get my ideas from, so a lot of the magic that I draw from involves a lot of, so far has had its roots in a lot of like the kind of Philippine mythology, or like just ghost stories that I very much grew up with. So there's a lot of that. But I feel like when I sit down and be like, I want to write something, I think about like, what story do I keep coming back to? What idea do I keep coming back to? Is there an article, or like, is there something that I'm constantly telling other people about? So for example, I wrote um, a young adult novel. This is not a personal statement. It's about a girl who does not get into her dream college. So she photoshops an acceptance letter and shows up on campus anyway. Right. Don't do that. No one do that. Fiction. It's fiction. But that was something that I'd read an article about just like ages ago, but it clearly never left my head. Like I found myself like constantly bringing it up. Like anytime somebody was like, oh, I want to go to this college, or like, oh, I heard so-and-so was faking this. I was like, let me tell you about this article I read. So things that just don't leave you. I feel like there's a reason you find that interesting. Like, try to explore that. So that's where a lot of my ideas come from, is just like, all right, what do I need to get out of my head?
Yeah, that makes sense. Really quickly, before I go on to the next question, you mentioned you just had a book published. I was wondering if you wanted to share it really quickly. I think I see it's right behind you.
Just dessert.
It's very nice that we are on like Zoom and there's like a one camera, because there's literally just junk like all over on this side. So this is like the one clean square of my house. All right. So this is They're Just Desserts, which I co-wrote with Alicia Dow, and it's the follow-up to The Cookie Crumbles. So these are both middle grade mysteries. The first one deals with an attempted murder because they would not let us kill anyone in middle grade, and we tried the whole thing. But obviously everyone is safe and fine because they show up for the second book. This one is the two girls, Lucy and Layla, go to the Holly Jolly baking show. They go to a reality baking competition and try to figure out who's been stealing from the set. So that was that one. That just came out last week.
So exciting. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Oh, it's been fun. And my co-author is actually, she is in Germany right now. So she was in the States for a while. Her husband's German. They kind of spend a couple years here and there. So we did not get to do any fun launch stuff because she's like 9 hours ahead of me.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, sad.
Oh, man. Well, all right. So, let's see. The next question, what or who is your inspiration? And you already kind of talked about that a little bit, things that won't leave your head. So I guess more like who is your inspiration?
I mean, I mentioned earlier, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of this and a lot of who I am is like because of that very forceful, wonderful Filipino grandmother. So she was a school teacher in the Philippines, and her dad like actually, tried to write a little bit. So, and I feel like there's a stereotype that like Asians are like very math and science oriented, and I'm like terrible at both of those. But in my family, it was very like my great grandfather taught history and like English in Filipino schools. So this was like not like there was nothing wrong with me wanting to pursue like a humanities thing except for like the lawyer like veering off course. But it's just it was in terms of inspiration, like she was always like trying to get me to go to the library, and we were just I used to write stories like and sell them to her for like 5 cents, which I mentioned to some kids on a school visit, and they're like 5 cents. I was like, you got to understand, this was like ages ago. They're like, at least $1. I was like, that's right, at least $1. So I would say she's an inspiration, and I will never ever tell him this because he'll lord it over me forever. But I have an older brother who I think part of me going from like, all right, I'm a lawyer, this is my full-time job, and wanting to jump into something else. And I feel like that's from like my brother who just like kept on racking up different graduate degrees, and he was in the Navy and then decided to go do this and then decided to do this. So there was just that sense of like, you're never just one thing. Like you can keep learning. You can keep growing, like no matter how old you are. He's like not that old. He's like going to be like, how dare you talk about me this way? But it's just there's something about that of like being around people who want you to grow or who are always pushing themselves. It's like, oh, I guess I could probably, turn off the TV for a little bit and like read something. So that's that. No one tell him.
Oh,
We will
In case
not.
you know him. No one
your
tell him.
secret's safe. You have
Oh,
our
I have a question.
And possibly on YouTube at this point, but it's fine.
Right? Your grandmother, you said you spent a lot of time with her. Was that here or was that in the Philippines?
Yeah, it was here. So I'm like born and raised here, and I'm in California.
Yeah.
And she came to the States like in the 1980s when my mom was like, oh my gosh, we're in over our head here with these children. So she it's so interesting when I think about the fact that she must have been in like her 50s and then totally just upended her entire life and then came to a whole different country to like watch her daughter's kids. I was like, wow, that's really awesome. And fun fact, I actually just saw my grandma this past, I guess, like last weekend because
difference.
Oh no.
for
No.
5 cents, I would give her that discount.
Okay, sorry, we
Sorry.
froze on our side. Can you say that again?
No, I said no. Ooh, oh, sorry, my internet is being funny. I said that my grandmother, I just saw her and I would be willing to sell her some books for 5 cents if she wanted them.
Amazing.
Now she gets the discount. All right. So yeah, so it sounds like your grandmother was a huge inspiration to you. What do you hope to inspire in others?
Oh, I mean, really just that kind of that joy of reading and that joy of storytelling. Like I said, a lot of my stuff really isn't all that serious, but there is a lot of room, I think, for just having some joyful reading, especially these days. So if it gets a kid to just hang out for the summer and you know, relax with a book and maybe like laugh a little bit, like that would make me happy.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so a little deeper question, another two-parter. Have you had challenges writing or publishing as an Asian American? And if you did, how did you overcome them?
Ooh. So that's an interesting one. So I feel like I am lucky because by the time I started writing Kidlit, there were already these like powerhouses on the scene. So when I was like, okay, I want to start writing middle grade or young adult, we already had like Randy Rebai and Aaron and these were like superstars in like the Filipino Kidlit. Like they showed that it could be done and that there is a commercial market for it and that there is also, you know, I mean, like that it's they have awards, which is great. It would be wonderful if we all won awards, but like it's just knowing that they're very highly regarded in the field and like they're making money off of it. I was like, oh, this is a thing. So honestly, that initial hurdle of like from it turning into like I'm kind of interested in this to oh, so this is doable. Like there are people who can do this. So like if I really, really try to learn this and try, you know, if I really want to, like maybe I can do this too. Um and externally, like I feel like you never know like what perhaps you're up against, but I have heard some friends you know, of like all sorts of different backgrounds will be like, oh, an agent told me that they already had a story about, you know, like a Korean American teen doing XYZ, so they didn't want another one. So I feel like you hear that from a lot of different, there's always a lot of whisper networks about, and I think people are very like rightfully careful about what they're saying about folks. But I think especially if you're writing from any sort of marginalization, you know, any like ethnicity or religion or sexual orientation, that kind of thing. Like just keep your ear to the ground just to see if there's anything you need to be at least aware of or of how people are going to be like reacting to your work, that kind of thing. I know that's all very vague, but like that would be my advice is like it's I trust everyone by nature, but I have had, you know, friends be like, you need to be a little bit careful about like who you're approaching with your work and that kind of thing. So surround yourself with some good writers. There's a market and an interest in all sorts. So yeah,
Okay.
keep on
Yeah,
going.
that makes total sense.
Absolutely.
I was like all over the place. So thank you for pretending that made sense.
It was great.
As always. All right. So we'll move along a little bit different. So what resources or techniques do you use when writing about diverse characters, especially those who are different from you?
Ooh. Yeah. So obviously I mentioned that my books have Filipino American main characters, but you know, obviously they're all situated here. Like all the settings are in the United States. And it's very rare that you literally just grow up and hang out with only Filipino American kids. So um I even with like, you know, with their just desserts, like the other main character is black and Alicia is also black. So it's getting to know in a very, you know, authentic, organic way, like getting to know other people and their culture and so forth. And really, even just reading widely, reading works by people of that background or who share that marginalization or perspective, just to see like how do they describe themselves, or what issues are they seeing as important that they're writing about. Because maybe, in your head you're like, oh, I'm going to have this character overcome this really really like hard-hitting important thing, and then read a bunch of work by authors of that, that background, you're like, oh, apparently this is like not as big of a deal as I thought. Maybe I can shift it a little bit. Or in my case, like just throw some magic in it and like call it a day. But I think it's really, reading widely and just like authentically and genuinely trying to get to know the people and the culture and like the characters, because there's, uh like with Filipino Americans, of like me being like the Asian that's terrible with math and science and like that kind of thing. I was like, there's always so much variability and so much depth in people that I feel like it's just you're reading widely and getting to know people is always my advice.
And this isn't an official question, but now I'm curious. Are these the cooking series you're talking about? Is that the first time you co-authored with someone?
Yes. So Alicia and she did the math. I didn't, because obviously, but she was like, she's like, we have been friends / critique partners for 9 years at this point. And this all started when back in the heyday of book Twitter, like when it wasn't a terribly toxic place, like there was a lot of critique matching kind of services, or like you would very like relatively easily be able to find someone who works on similar stuff as you and maybe exchange a few pages, see how that goes. So we got paired up and it worked. We just like since then we've read everything that each other has written. So when she was like, hey, maybe we should co-author something, um she was like, it could involve baking and maybe it's a mystery. And then from there, we just spitballed enough that it became like a solid idea and became a book.
So cool. How did you even approach, like, do you have the same agent?
We did for a while, but she has a different agent now. But yeah, that did make it easier because it was an easier thing to be like, hey, let's have this one idea and like bring it to our agent. But I do have friends who they co-write and they have different agents, and they still, I think they come up with the idea and like a pitch and they bring it to both of their agents and be like, hey, this is what we're thinking of doing. And they do sign basically just like co-writing agreements of like, if someone decides to like, I don't want to do this anymore, like the other person can, run with the idea, things like that, just so there's not too much friction if like someone decides they really don't want to pursue it, or they don't want to go in that direction, that kind of thing.
Okay, that's so cool.
It is really neat.
I've
The
always
lawyer in me too. I was like, here's this agreement. And Alicia was like, what is this?
What
And I was
is
like,
this?
just sign it. It was fine. It was like one page. It wasn't anything terrible.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That's true. I did not make the connection until you just said it, that your day job would be
Yeah.
Yeah.
very
Very
useful.
That would be handy.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
We immediately all signed up for law school.
Thank you.
It's not worth the debt. Just like find people like me who like force it.
Oh, goodness.
Just trade skills. I'm an editor by
There you
profession,
go.
so.
See?
Yeah.
There you go.
Good
There you
job.
go.
Yes.
All right, so you talked about this a little bit with your co-author, but have you used sensitivity readers? Do you have, and if you don't, do you have resources or contacts for sensitivity readers?
So I have, and this is because I write very heavily in the Philippine-based mythology kind of space. So my first book, Freddy versus the Family Curse, actually had a lot of the Filipino superstition, and then some mentions like of World War II in the Philippines. So there were some things that I knew of from people but hadn't experienced firsthand, and it was important to me to get it right especially for like my first book, to make sure that I was like approaching it right. So I was able to, again, back in the heyday of book Twitter, you would be able to kind of like search for sensitivity readers or find databases. And I'm sure those actually still do exist. So I had a few people in mind, and I brought it to my publisher and was like, hey, I'd really like to do this, and here's why. And they were the ones who were able to, you know, contract with that sensitivity reader, and they paid for it on that side. So again, it's just making sure that I got it right, because I didn't want to totally like butcher the whole thing with my take.
So did you have them sort of fact check? Is that my understanding?
Yes. So fact check, and really like even like terminology check, if that makes sense, of like the way that I would describe something may not be the way that they would describe it. So there was, oh, and I don't remember the exact language of it, but at one point, like my character had said something about like, oh yeah, something we went to, like, we always used to do this when we went to church on Sundays or whatever. And then my sensitivity reader came back and was like, actually, like, if this was in the Philippines, they would probably phrase it this way. I was like, oh, interesting. Like things that, you know, we say it just like that here, but like if I'm trying to really make it authentic, like somebody might notice, someone in the Philippines might notice. So it was interesting.
So do you do that for all of your books then? From the Filipino side?
I did it a couple of times, but I haven't so much lately. And I think part of that is because the kind of, depending on what I'm writing about, like there's the depth of knowledge. I know how to do the research now. And then the critique partners I have and the people that I have reading it, like also know what to look out for. So I think a lot of it came with experience. But I also write, you know, very, again, when it's not a very like identity based or, you know, historically based something that I'm writing, like it's a little less like someone can always argue with my perspective, or someone can always argue with like the experience that I'm writing about. And it's like, they're like, that would be fine with me. I was like, oh, okay, well then that's how they would do it in their lives. But there's nothing like historically inaccurate about, you know, me embarrassing myself in 6th grade or something like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay. So another big one.
Hard getting questions. I love it.
These are all Karen, so just looked them over and revised a little. So this is a really big one, and I would like to know this personally as well. But how do you balance writing with your job and motherhood?
Yeah. As you can tell, it is also, you know, 2:30 p.m. here on a Sunday, and I'm having a nice hot cup of coffee because I don't sleep ever. So like the real answer is, oh man, is an intense amount of scheduling.
Yeah.
To the point where it's probably a little bit overbearing on like my family and friends, but it's very deadline oriented. So like I don't do this all the time. If I know I have like, oh, I have to get a draft done, or I really want to focus on something, you know, my husband will take the kids out for a day to like my mother-in-law's house, and then that gives me a few hours. Or at night, like if everyone's asleep, I can squeeze in an hour of writing. There's something about being busy that makes you more efficient, if that makes sense. Like if you know you only have an hour before everyone like wakes up and destroys everything, you're like, all right, I will write this chapter, like if it kills me. So because, okay, in full disclosure, like very, very recently, like within the last couple of weeks, I'm going to try to make the full-time author thing work. But what I'm running into is now I have like no schedule in that same way. So like I'll sit down and be like, all right, let me pull up my like Scrivener, let me pull up an outline. Oh, I haven't done an Instagram post today. And then like I'll go do that for like 2 hours. So there is something about having structure. And in my head, like the first thing on my to-do list this week is to like come up with a little bit more of a structure, a little bit more of a schedule for myself. And I have asked around, and friends are like, yeah, like those who do write full time, they will write only, a certain number of days a week because they force themselves to have a weekend, and they do XYZ so that it doesn't take over your life. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
the answer from me a couple months ago would have been intense amount of scheduling and just like powering through and drinking all the coffee. But my answer now is like, I don't know. No. We'll see. We'll see how I make it work.
Yeah.
Super exciting though.
Yeah, I hope you're able
Yeah.
to make it a reality.
Oh,
It's kind of the dream.
It is, but it's incredibly scary.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, because as you all know, I mean, at all levels of writing and publication, unless you're like, the Victoria Schwabs who are like
yes.
output and they're bestsellers all the time. It's like you are constantly having to create and to constantly sell yourself and sell new things. So what might have worked, a couple years ago may not be what the market wants. Like, I don't write romantasy, but like that's the big thing right now.
Right.
Or like, what if, like, are vampires coming back? Like, I'm not sure. Like, I don't write those either. So it's really, it is, I think, just the constantly being willing to like grow and learn and keep on going is valuable at all stages.
Well, selfishly myself, so I'm pre-published, but that's very reassuring to hear. So thank you.
Is it reassuring that I'm like, it never gets better? I was like,
I mean,
you'll do fine. And then you'll like be plagued with self-doubt again. But it's a cycle. Don't worry.
yes.
It's a cycle.
It's both end. So, okay. Okay, this is another big one and two-parter. It's how Karen rolls.
That's right.
So let's see. Have you identified any blind spots in how you portray an experience different from your own that you've encountered? And how have you adjusted your thinking/writing to overcome these?
Ooh, that's tough because it's very much a you don't know what you don't know thing. And I very purposefully limit my exposure to like book reviews. I'm very fragile. Like, I don't need I welcome feedback, but like if I'm not prepared for it, it could like ruin my entire day. But I think if we're talking, so writing is one thing, but if we're talking publishing, like in general, if we're talking about things that I don't know, like one thing that's been on my mind lately is the fact that we're in an age where there can be too much information in a space, and it's hard to tell what is reliable and what's not. So like an example would be like all the different levels of social media discourse of like, you should write first person, no one writes first person, or like we should write vampires, no one write vampires. Of like there is, especially if you are trying to come up with new ideas or break into the industry, there's sometimes like too much. there is too much to sort through. And I feel like coming to so I'm a member of our SCBWI here in San Diego, and I feel like I place a lot of importance in making sure that even if I'm going to expose myself to the whole social media discourse of like being around people who are like professionals or who work in the industry or who, understand like what's trendy, what has been talked about before, that kind of thing. I feel like that has helped allay some of the panic that sometimes comes with publishing, if that makes sense. Like just finding a handful of trusted writer, like author colleagues, just so you know what's happening in the market, so you don't have to worry every time someone's like, they're only buying romantasy. You're like, no, I don't have to change my picture book into a romantasy. Like I can keep on doing what I'm doing, and there's still going to be a market for it, and there's still, like it's very easy to get caught up in things. And that's, I think, something that blindsided me when I first started wanting to write, like write to get published, was realizing like, oh no, there's so much going on all the time. And I had a friend who was like an agent at the time, and she was like, well, yes, but also no, because a lot of people are still continuing to do like their same job, and they're still looking for the same things, and still looking for like good writing and that kind of thing. So not sure if I answered the question, but like, be careful what you read on the internet is like the short is the short bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. So you've already actually answered this question plenty, but I'll ask it anyway. So, what advice would you give other authors who feel discouraged or intimidated by the publishing industry, or for authors who are just starting a career in writing? You did address a little bit.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's right. It's that. And I feel this is what's hard is when you tell people to find, like, everyone's like, find your fellow writers, find your fellow, other people. It is incredibly difficult, because you also have to find folks who, I guess, work similarly to you, of like they're in the same stage of wanting to get published. They are in, like they write similar things, so that you're similar in that, like maybe similar age range or something, so that you know what kind of feedback to give each other. And I feel bad, because my advice would always have been like, go to book Twitter, which is not a thing. Do not go to book Twitter. It's terrible. But there used to be a lot of thriving social media spaces where you could find other writers. But I think people are starting to gel on like Blue Sky and maybe Threads. Like those are a couple places that I've seen. Illustrators, I think, are on Instagram a lot. But like I found a lot of my early writing partners in like SCBWI. So there is something to be said also of like physically sitting across from someone and be like, tell me how terrible my writing is. And they'll be like, no, it's okay. Like there is something about the face-to-face interaction and like sitting and learning from just being around different folks. So the long answer is like, again, find your writer colleagues. It is easier said than done.
Oh, I was gonna ask you, when you joined SCBWI, were you looking for an agent? Like, where were you in the process?
Oh yeah, I was like brand new.
Okay, so then so when you started to like look for critique partners and like help and stuff like that, where did you go? Like, did you go to Mingles? Where did you go?
Yeah, so I feel like it went so the first thing I did was I signed up for a like how to write kids books class through the UC, like University of California extension program. So it's like, their college, it was online. And it was a very small class where you listen to some like lectures and you interact on like discussion boards. So that was my very first exposure to like, okay, I want to get started in Kidlit. Like, let me figure this out. And it was through there that like, they would be like, here are some resources, SCBWI. And then from there, I like Googled it. I was like, oh, okay, this is like a huge organization. They have meetings all the time. Like I can do that. So that was like the jumping off point as I started going to those. And then SCBWI is where, as people were talking and trading resources there, that's when I learned that like book Twitter was a thing, and that like you can trust some people on the internet.
Sometimes.
Some people
Right.
just nice.
I feel like there's a good portion of us, I think, who are old enough to not like my very first screen name on AOL had nothing to do, like you couldn't find out my name. Like we were very wary of strangers. And then all of a sudden that shifted, and it's like, hey, tell somebody all about yourself and then send them your entire novel and they'll give you feedback. And I was like, I don't know. This sounds fake.
I think you're
I know. I still like, but there was learning from SCBWI who the reputable resources were, and a lot of those were like, okay, this person on Twitter and this person, and here's how to know that somebody is maybe not above board. Like it was that, and I found a lot of value in that.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's great.
that is great.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, because I'm fairly new, I'm like 2 years active in SCBWI, but how's the San Diego chapter? Is it pretty big? Because San Diego is big. I mean, we have all Phoenix, but we're kind of split up into 3 big regions, I would say.
It's pretty big, but we also are not competing, but like there's a San Diego chapter, and then Orange County, which is an hour
Right.
and some change, and then from Orange County is like the LA chapter. So there's just a ton of us.
Yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
that is interesting. I was just curious because it's a huge metro area, and so it's
Yeah.
Phoenix, obviously.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, because we have Flagstaff, like the northern Arizona, which is like 4 hours from Phoenix.
Yeah.
And then we also have southern Arizona and Tucson, which is like 2 hours from here.
Mhm.
So
Ah.
Arizona is like the whole state,
Yeah,
but it's
whole chapter
technically
is the
like
whole-
3 different regions, but under one umbrella.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And isn't there even for the Phoenix area, isn't there a
there's
West
there's the
Valley
East
and
Valley
an
and a
East
West
Valley?
Valley.
Because they're like an hour and 20 minutes
Yes.
apart,
Right,
so
yeah.
Yeah, it's just really spread out.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big city.
But that makes sense too, because California is even
It's
bigger
even
and
bigger.
more spread out.
Absolutely.
That would just be San Diego.
Yeah.
Which is why I gotta say, like, I do like the move of everyone going like virtual or hybrid virtual, because it just made it so much easier to like learn things. Especially like I, kicked my kids out the door with my husband, but I was like, it's very hard to find time sometimes to be like, all right, I need to get dressed like a real person, like go drive over to somewhere, find parking, sit, like there's like sometimes it's a whole to do. And I think this kind of takes the edge off of like, all right, I'm interested in writing, or I'm interested in this new thing. Let me just sit in and listen. Like I feel like that's helpful.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's true. We're all in agreement with you.
Yes. It's almost like, it feels like because it's online, it's not as big, it's not as big of a step
Yeah.
as being in person and like,
As
oh my
people
gosh,
put
I'm gonna
it.
do this
Yeah.
writing thing. It's gonna be this huge block of my time versus like, I'm just gonna jump online and maybe listen to it in the background while I wash dishes or something like that.
Yeah. And I don't know. Sorry, it's like I'm like deviating here, but I feel like one of the things that I did very early on, just to even like understand what publishing is I listened to a lot of podcasts. So you mentioned like doing the dishes is like I would listen to publishing related podcasts just
Okay.
literally to get the terminology straight. So if like one of my friends would joke about something, be like, blah, 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 and then we were on sub for 6 months, and then like I would just, like whatever, laugh on cue, and then be like, what does on sub mean? Like I would have to go figure it out later. And this was happening with so many publishing terms. So it's like, all right, I need to fix this so that I'm not just like awkwardly laughing at like the wrong times. So podcasts while you're doing dishes is like,
Do you
it's
have any
good.
suggestions for publishing podcasts?
It's like I feel like is it writing excuses is pretty reliable. There's a couple that I have, and I haven't unfortunately some of the ones that I've listened to lately, I think folks take a hiatus when they realize like, oh no, this is a lot of work to write and create a podcast. So if you want to go back into some archives, I really liked Claire Bella Ortega's Write or Die. And then this was like a much older one, but I first got started on listening. It was 88 Cups of Tea. And it wasn't just authors, it was just like creatives of all sorts. And that was just nice too.
Yeah.
This is great
Thank
because
you.
I think any extra help that we can give to writers who are just starting, like I think that's what people want to know about, those types of things.
Yeah, because there is such a thing as like, again, the too much stuff on the internet. the podcasts helped, is like, okay, I can vet who who I'm listening to. They're an agent or they're an editor, like they know what they're talking about. Let me like sit and listen to them and like not be perceived. So it'll be good.
Right, yeah, because there's a lot of writing advice out there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
especially starting out, it's like, okay, well.
Yeah. And it like helps. I think it helps focus it, because you can see again like what the credentials of the person are and you can decide to listen to it or not. So it's, I don't know. I'm pro podcasts now, especially because in California we spend a lot of time in the car. Like a lot of time in the car.
Oh,
That's
that's so true.
Yeah, probably more than we do, which
Yeah.
is saying
Fine with
something.
us, Yeah.
Okay, excellent. All right, so final question. What is your current project? Well, you kind of talked about what you just finished, so I guess, what's next for you?
So I'm, trying to figure out what kind of books I want to write next. I might dive back into the YA space, but while I'm figuring that out, I do have another book coming out at the end, towards the end of this year. It's in September. It's called Ghoul Summer. It is, so if you've ever stayed at like a B&B or like a vacation rental where you walk in and you're like, oh, this place has got to be haunted. Like, what is that door? Why doesn't that door open? Like, I don't really know about this. So if you've ever wondered if it's haunted, like in this story, it is. there is a ghost. And it's about a 12-year-old boy who, they go somewhere for the summer to help his grandfather move. And their vacation rental is inhabited by a ghost who demands that the boy helps with his unfinished business, or he's going to basically hitch a ride home with the boy, like by possessing his body. So,
Oh,
So no
kind of a bad
murder,
summer.
no murder, possession is okay. No.
No murder, mild possession. It was just like his
Okay.
hands, and he was like,
No.
accidentally knock things over, get blamed for it, that kind of thing.
Okay, got
But-
it.
But no murder.
Got it.
Amazing. I love it.
Very cool. I love it. Okay, well.
Yeah, so I'm excited about it. It was a lot of fun to write. I love ghost stories, but I'm also like very easily scared by things. So all of my stuff has like a cozy element to it. Like I was at a school visit and all these kids were like, do you write true crime? I'm like, no, I am afraid of true crime. I like
Yeah, me too.
don't watch any of this stuff on Netflix. Like I can't do any of it. Like it's a ghost story, but it's very fun and cozy. It's like, no.
My favorite,
Yeah.
I
anything
love that,
cozy.
yeah.
Especially in the current climate, I just really need
Yes.
something cozy to
Yeah.
escape into. I can't
Agreed.
do anything dystopian because we're already living that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Agreed.
And I've never been a horror fan
No.
either.
No.
So,
I can't do horror.
yeah.
No.
So this sounds perfect.
Cozy,
I
cozy.
was gonna say, we've got about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Are you okay opening to questions?
Absolutely.
All right.
I have a question. Been on the edge of my seat for like 8 minutes. Okay, so as you mentioned a few minutes ago, like there's a lot of like advice out there. And I've read many books on craft. I've probably read like 10 of them. And they always have, I mean, I feel like there's something useful in all of them, but then there's always something in all of them where I'm like, wait, what? Like that can't be right. And what I'm wondering is how do you filter out the advice, the guidelines, the recommendations? How do you decide what is legit and how do you decide what is not?
Oh man. So a lot of this is asking around. So for example, I know a lot of people who really swear by like Save the Cat, like the novel, like the the screenwriting guide. And so I'd mention that to someone, they're like, oh yeah, like that's great, but there's also a Save the Cat, like the novel, like it's more tailored towards novel writing, because if it was movies, it would be a lot more like very fast and the beats are like not predictable, but like it's very structured. And so there's a novel version of that. So it's like it's finding out, just like telling people and asking around for feedback, because there are a lot of craft books out there, and there are a lot of different resources, and I just like to hear what works for people and then why. So ask around. And if you're looking, okay, so unsolicited advice, if you're looking for craft books, one of the game changers for me was so the Story Genius by Lisa Cron and Emotional Craft of Fiction, I want to say, by Donald J. Moss. So these are the like what shifted in my head that a story cannot just be plot. It can't just be things happening. Because I can write things happening, like that's what like the legal writing is like so and so did X, Y, and Z. But filling in those emotional beats of like, okay, so how did it make them feel? And what exactly is show, don't tell? Like, what are these things? And like, so it wasn't until I really was looking at like examples and like diving into exercises, it's like, oh, I get it now. Like this, you have to have emotion in a book. You can't just be like, you know, so and so did this and the other guy was sad. Next chapter, it's like there has something there.
Go figure, right?
Yeah. Who knew that books had to like have things in them?
Themes and such. Very nice. Okay. Anything else?
This is just a personal question for me. What is your shortest middle grade book and what is your longest? What is the word count? Uh-oh.
So co-written, my co-written books are gigantic. In my head, they're gigantic. But I say that because I have friends who write like adult and they're like, oh, my draft is 140,000 words. And I like fall out of my chair because that sounds like too many words. But I think the cookie crumbles, and this is jointly written, like I'll write a chapter and then Alicia will write a chapter and that kind of thing. And we meld it together. This maybe around 80,000 words. And that comes out to like 300-ish pages.
And
My shortest one is gonna be Ghoul Summer, and I feel like it's less than 50K.
Oh, really?
It's very, and I purposefully wrote it very short. I also just tend to underwrite. Like I will just, as you can tell, I'll just be like, this happened and they were sad, moving on. And then someone has to come in and be like, Tracy, describe, like, who are these characters? Like, describe these things. So that one is about a little bit under 50,000 words, I think. And then that's going to like, as a book, it's going to be like 240 pages. So that is actually like very short in like the middle grade with magic space.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it longer? Is the Just Desserts and the other one, Cookie Crumbles, is it longer? Did they allow it to be longer because it's dual perspective?
I think so. And I think also because we were still within like the middle grade mystery space. So if it was like a straight like kind of contemporary kid goes on a journey and like XYZ, like it's probably going to be shorter. But because you actually like, they made us weave in red herrings and they made us weave in things, right? So it's like, because of that, you have to have, an extra 10K to mislead the reader, things like that. So I feel like we had some wiggle room on it, but I think especially in middle grade, I think if you get a little too close to like too many digits, like if you're approaching 100,000, like you gotta really see where you can cut back.
Well, the reason I asked is I'm writing, it's very much upper middle grade, almost YA crossover. The kids in it are 12 to 15, but the main character is 12. But it's about 74,000, just under that. And I had some people telling me that was way too long, like 55 max. And I was like, for fantasy, like for portal fantasy?
The second you add, I think the second you add a speculative element to it, it like it kicks it like it automatically kicks up the word count, because like I can say I'm having a cup of coffee, But if it's a cup of magical something that if I drink too much, like I'll XYZ, like, it's then you have to
Yeah.
build in that room for it. So I have heard different ranges when you
Yeah.
start adding speculative elements. So
Okay.
Ghoul Summer is short, but it's also literally just like, okay, it's a ghost in the house and he's threatening to possess you. Moving
Yeah.
on.
But
Still
it's
in
like
this
beach
world, it's like a
world,
beach
yeah.
house. It's like
Right.
it's
Okay.
very straightforward. But I think if I'd gotten like much more, like added more mythology, or like if it was less grounded in this world, it probably would have ballooned a little bit
Okay.
more.
That's helpful. Yeah, that calms some of my concerns. I've just been like, I can't do Portal Fantasy in 55,000 words. I don't know how.
Right.
I don't, yeah. You'd have to like literally cut out an entire, yeah, that would be tough. It would be cutting out like an entire like, and the character goes and does this important thing, and like
Yeah.
that's too hard.
So, okay, thank you.
I had a question along terms of genre. What for you are the biggest differentiators, apart from age, between your middle grade and your YA?
Cool. So my middle grades do, other than, having the magic in it, they do tend to be a little bit more silly. Just because you can be, because kids aren't going to be as intense about it as teens being like, so you think you're cool, and be like, no, I don't think I'm cool. I'm so sorry. But with and somebody had explained this to me, and I'll see if I could dig up the resource on it, but it was the idea that with teens, so in middle grade, you're really trying to find your place, like among your friends and your family, and you're trying to figure out where you fit. Whereas when you're a teen and you've kind of already, your personality's already kind of gelled, you're figuring out how to differentiate yourself, or you're trying to figure out how to be who you want to be without, all these external forces like coming at you. So it's like, not every story's like that, but like the more I started thinking about it that way, I was like, okay, so some stories where it's like, this person's new and they want to fit in at school, like maybe that I could write it better in middle grade, whereas in the teen space, it's like, all right, they're at this new school, maybe they just want to show like how cool they are, and like they want to be the artist and they want to be this, and they don't really like the sports culture of that school, something like that. So it's a little bit of different how the age ranges approach a problem.
That's actually really great.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with it. I read it somewhere, so I will try to find it.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes. Well, anything else?
No.
Be present. You're very thorough, Tracy. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna stop the recording though.
If
Don't-
I can
don't
find
leave.
it, I'll do it. Yeah.
Hey,
What was it?
It's to your left.
Oh,
Three buttons to your left.
That one?
Yeah, we could do that too. It's on both top and bottom.
then